Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the Week, Parshat VaYeshev. And before we forget, if you like these classes, please share them with others. So this week's Parsha is a bit heavy. It's a bit difficult, and we're going to try to bring out some insights based on Rebbe Nachman's lesson, Likutey Moharan 24. And I still don't believe how we're over a year and still being able to find some types of insights and connections between the Parsha of the week and this amazing lesson, lesson 24. So to recap what Rabbi Nachman says in lesson 24 that a Jew should strive to be besimcha and do mitzvot besimcha. The reward is endless. The reward of investing in simcha and doing mitzvot besimcha affords a person access to the infinite light. And the infinite light translates as clarity in life's challenges and frustrations and confusions that come to a person. To get that light of clarity is the infinite light. However, in order for the infinite light to shine to a person must face setbacks. In the Kabbalah, they're called betishot, a smack backwards. And the person, when he's smacked back, he descends to the domain called the exchange chambers. The exchange chambers is another term for the physicality, the gross physicality, and the crazy tests that people go through in this world, where everything is mixed up. Right is mixed up with wrong, truth with falsehood, holiness, purity with impurity, right from wrong, etc. That's the challenges of this world, and a person has to rise up from them through being besimcha, working on that attitude of simcha. And by doing so, one comes out of the exile. And ultimately also, we will come out of the general exile through simcha, like the pasuk reads, Ki v'simcha titzeu. This, in a nutshell, is what Rabbi Nachman says in that lesson. He also says that how the activation of the light that is needed in life works is that a person's intellect, the mind, which is comprised of three parts called chokhmah, bina, da'at, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Those are three faculties that the mind uses in order to think. That when a person is happy and inflamed and enthusiastic and he has good intentions, so when he gets up to what's called the keter, which is the wall, if you want to call it, the interface that separates mankind from the infinite light, it's the cause that pushes a person backwards as a protective measure, that the person shouldn't be overflamed by the light. That's why the keter is working like that. Okay, so what goes up when a person has aspiration and enthusiasm, it's a person's mind that's running forward towards this light. And when it experiences the setback, the pushback, the betisha, back into exchange chambers, so the mind's three sections become mingled, intertwined, intermingled, creating a multiple factor. So it becomes 3 times 3. The three sections of the mind, chokhmah, bina, da'at, become so intermingled that they're multiplied into new combinations, totaling 9. 3 times 3. Because you do 1, 2, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3. You have in total 9 separate combinations. Even some are redundant, but it works out to be a total of 9 in total. So this is the 9 plus the 1, which is the keter, make the number 10. And in the big picture, this 9 plus 1 making 10 is again the secret hidden behind creation from the beginning. At the beginning of the creation, there were the 10 utterances of the creation, and the Lord said that there be light, and the Lord said, and the Lord said. There's 9 in total. That's what's called the Ma'amar Satum, the hidden utterance, which is the initial verse called Bereshit. There's the 10 Sfirot, which are comprised of the 9 lower Sfirot and the Keter. There are the 10 Commandments Moshe Rabbeinu gave at Har Sinai, where Anochi, the first one, had in it the energy of the other 9. Okay? And we have this number 10 repeating also the 10 types of melody, the 10 levels of holiness in Israel, the 10 plagues stricken to the Egyptians. The number 10 appears again and again, where the 10 is made up of 9 plus 1. Because the 1 is in its own category, the keter, and the 9, which are the ones, the person's mind leading up to the keter. That, in a nutshell, is the idea of whenever you see the number 10 appearing in various places throughout the Torah. With that all said, let's take a look at the Parsha. In the Parsha, we see that Yaakov was really bereaved and in mourning when he found that Yosef was no longer there, and he had no idea if he was dead. And it's a big thing here. It's a big question, because Rashi quotes the sages that Hashem made it that a person who passes on, Hashem created that it's the nature of the family members to become consoled. They reach consolation when a person dies because they know he's in the other world already. There's nothing he can do, and he should have rest there. But a person who's still alive, there's no consolation. So Yaakov Avinu, if now he's not being consoled for 22 years, it says that, let's go on to the Parsha, that Yosef was taken away from Yaakov for a period of 22 years as a punishment. Why? As a punishment for the 22 years that Yaakov did not do the mitzvah of kibud orim. He did not respect his parents properly because he was 22 years by Lavan, including the 7 times 2 years for getting married to Rachel and Leah, additional years for acquiring the sheep from Lavan, and then the traveling. All that in total is 22 years. And Yaakov was considered punished for those 22 years, even though Yitzchak and Rivka told him to go. So he's doing a mitzvah of listening to his parents. But they say because he could have left earlier, the opinions in the Midrash and the Pirkei Rabbi Lezer and other books, that he could have left earlier, and he didn't. So that's why he was punished for all this section of the whole set of 22 years. So because he didn't do the mitzvah of kibud orim 22 years, Yosef was taken away from Yaakov for a total of 22 years. And during those 22 years, the divine spirit did not properly rest on Yaakov, mainly because a person who's not happy cannot have the divine presence rest on them. So he was in a difficult situation because Yosef was taken away from him. And number 2, he had no idea if he was dead or alive. So the question is, if the sages say, and Rashi brings down the quotation of the sages, that someone who passes on, you can be consoled. So if Yaakov, you're not being consoled, that means that Yosef is still alive. So why this worrying and panicking and mourning for his son? If now he can't forget about him, that means he's still alive. So they say the sages something amazing, the commentaries, that Tzaddikim, when they pass on, they're still considered alive. So if for Yaakov, it was not a barometer measurement, if now that he's forgetting about him, that he's still alive. Because a tzaddik, even after he passes on, is still technically alive. So therefore, it doesn't make a difference if it's before his passing or after his passing. He has the title of being a live tzaddik. So because of that, Yaakov was unrested for 22 years. Okay? Now, in the selling of Yosef, they sold the brothers, the 9 brothers, excluding Reuven. So there's 9 brothers, sold Yosef to various travelers, various merchants, who eventually sold him to Egypt. Okay? Showing their distaste to what Yosef HaTzadik represented and his significance. And selling him is to indicate, we're selling you off as if you're not important, and that's why we're getting rid of you in this format, okay? So Rashi brings down that they wanted to put on cherem, on a ban of excommunication, anybody who reveals to Yaakov that Yosef is still alive. Now, to do a cherem, a ban, excommunication, you need 10 people, 10 men. Here there were 9. So they joined in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, blessed be He, and said, you are number 10, and it's all based on your opinion. If you want Yaakov not to know about this, then so be it. And if you want to reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is still alive, so be it. It's up to you. That's why they joined in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's what Rashi says. Even Yitzchak Avinu knew that Yosef was still alive, but he could not tell him because of the ban, excommunication ban they made, were including HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he also agreed to it. So therefore, Yitzchak couldn't even tell his son. And he was crying for his son, with his son, because of his son. Yitzchak was crying because of Yaakov's suffering, okay? And also on the other end, Yosef, who eventually became viceroy, he also couldn't just reveal himself and tell his father before the time that he's still alive. Why? because he saw that Hashem joined the excommunication decree that no one should reveal to Yaakov that Yosef is still alive. So Yosef, even though now became viceroy, he could not reveal himself to send a message to Egypt that he's still alive. Okay? So what's going on here? What's all this stuff here? The idea, there's so many things here. Let's try to piece them step by step. Yaakov was punished 22 years for not doing the mitzvah of Kibud Horim. What's that? What's the so severity of that? You know, he was listening to Yitzchak in the end, but he was punished, like we said, because he could have come earlier. So why this big punishment, severe punishment of exile and suffering for 22 years? So the idea is because Yitzchak, his name is also rooted in laughter, tzchok. And like we said many times, Yaakov also is the epitome of complete joy. In both his names, Yagel Yaakov, Yismach Yisrael. Yaakov is the delight, and Yisrael is joy. That Yaakov has this balance of maintaining joy through the ups and downs of life. Okay? And that's what's feeding to Yitzchak. But now Yaakov, he also has an extension. His extension is Yosef. Right? Like Rashi brings the famous verse that it says, and Yaakov will be a fire, and the house of Joseph will be a flame, and the house of Esau will be like straw that will burn. So the idea is that Yaakov, which is a flame, is a fire source, without a flame to extend itself, can't go very far. So Yosef, Rashi brings this down, is like the flame of Yaakov's fire. That's why only once Yosef was born did Yaakov now feel that he's now ready to go back to Eretz Yisrael and to face Esau. Because now that the Satano Shel Esau was born, the arch enemy, the equivalent enemy of Esau, being Yosef, was born, Yaakov had nothing to fear anymore. Because Yosef is the extension. In our context, Rebbe Nachman explains that Yosef means an extension. He's extending the joy. Yaakov is the source of joy. We said Yagel Yaakov Yismach Yisrael. But he needs Yosef to be the one to extend that light to the dark crevices. That's why it's Yosef, which means Tosefet, an extension. Additional extension of what? Of Simcha. Okay? So Yosef represented the idea of Simcha, but especially Simcha in being a tzaddik. In other words, he was happy as he was in his connection to God, and the fact that he was holding at such a high level of being a tzaddik, and that he was happy. So going back, Yitzchak, Yaakov, punishment, 22 years. Mida keneged Mida, to pay for that, Yaakov had to be separated from Yosef, who was his extension, for 22 years, just like he was separated from Yitzchak for 22 years, okay? So the idea of now, this had to happen. The reason why Hashem agreed to the cherem, excommunication, is because the Jewish people had to eventually descend into Egypt. And this, like Rashi points out in this week's Parshah, this is the beginning story of the Exodus into Egypt. What is the significance of the Exodus to Egypt? The reason why we learn every year in the Torah the Parshas regarding Egypt, because it's a symbol for what we're going through today in this final fourth exile under Edom. It's a parallel to what happened in Egypt. Okay? Rebbe Nachman says that quoting the Midrash, that all exiles, all four exiles are called Egypt. Why? Why are they called Mitzrayim? Al Shem Shem Metzerin, because they caused tightness, dire straits to the Jewish people. That's every exile. So, going back, Yosef had to initiate the going down of the Jews to Egypt for the sake of collecting holy sparks that were trapped there, and then with the Exodus coming back and eventually reaching the Holy Land with this energy, additional energy. So the catapult for getting the Jews to get there was initiated by forcing Yosef HaTzadik to go there. Now the 10 spies, or really it was the 9 spies, sorry, not spies, the 9 brothers, what did they have in mind? They had in mind to banish Yosef. What's the idea? This is a bit deep and this is a bit sensitive, this topic. The idea that they disagreed with Yosef HaTzadik is the modern day conflict in views and opinions of various tzaddikim and Jewish leaders as what's primary importance. You have many tzaddikim who say Torah study is paramount importance. You have the tzaddikim who say doing acts of tzedakah and chesed is of paramount importance. There are others who say tshuva is of paramount importance. Others who say davening. Others who say getting other people to come back to Hashem. Other people who say this, other that. You have different opinions. But there's one sensitive item that really is like tread upon by all the tzaddikim, and it's the main thing though. It's the idea of the tzaddik. That really, in Judaism, the major primary emphasis for everything else is the tzaddik. Yosef, in his dreams, was showing his brothers that he had mastered the concept of the tzaddik. That's what he related in the dreams twice. You guys are bowing down to me. The stars and the sun and the moon are bowing down to me. The stalks of wheat are bowing down to me. Everyone is bowing down to me because I've earned the title of being a tzaddik. And his brothers hated him for that. Because even till today, this is the main test. When people talk about the concept of tzaddikim and faith in tzaddikim and blind emunah, and as that's the key, this is a topic which is very hard for most people to digest. They can understand Torah study, encouragement, Torah of Pshetalech. When it comes to talking about the tzaddik, it's something which is sensitive. So the other 9 brothers, all being tzaddikim, but feeling other items are of priority, they couldn't stand the concept of the tzaddik, which is what led them to sell Yosef to Egypt. As if to say, this idea of bringing the redemption to the concept of tzaddik is not important to us. It's bothersome. It's not acceptable. And therefore we're selling it. We're taking the idea of the tzaddik, selling it into the exile, into the klipot, into Egypt. Okay? Hashem's intent, why he agreed to the cherem, because this is anyways what had to happen. This is the catapult to get the Jews going down to Egypt. That was needed, initiated. But the purpose of the 9 brothers, the nine tribes, was that they're saying that this concept is not the main issue to bring the Geulah. It's secondary and of no importance, so we're going to sell it and send it to Egypt. Till today also, Rav Nosson writes, this is the main difficulty for people to swallow. Even in Breslov today, the Breslov movement, we can talk about encouragement, Simcha, Torah study, Hitbodedut, all the advice that Rebbe Nachman gives to get a person going. But when the Breslovers start talking about the concept of the tzaddik, it becomes delicate, it becomes discomfort. People are not comfortable hearing these ideas. People are all of a sudden question. You can put on Facebook and LinkedIn and WhatsApp nice posts of encouragement, but as soon as you put a post about the concept of the tzaddik, all of a sudden people attack. How about Hashem? Where's Hashem in the picture? Why do you guys always talk about the tzaddikim? Already people jump on the bandwagon. Comes to the tzaddik. This is reflected too in this week's Parshah, that they sold Yosef a tzaddik to indicate, no, we're not interested in this, even though it is the main thing. Proof being is that Yosef was the one who saved everybody at the end. There was the famine, and the brothers came down prostrating to Yosef, and his dreams became fulfilled. And he's the one who sustained and caused the survival of Yaakov and his family. So you see that this is the main point. Oh, Yosef Chai. Yosef is still alive, and he's a king, and he's telling Yaakov, come down, okay? I'll sustain you because there's a famine in the world. You can't handle. You have to come down to Egypt, in order to survive. So this was the intent of the 9 brothers. Reuven wasn't there. That's why there's only 9. Really, there were 10 brothers around. 10 plus Yosef 11, and Binyamin, who was already just young, he was too small. He was number 12. So he wasn't involved, of course, and Reuven wasn't there. The Torah says itself that he had intents to save Yosef from this plot. So it was 9 brothers. 9 plus 1, Hashem. This again is the concept that Rebbe Nachman mentions in lesson 24 of the running of the mind, hitting the keter, and then being made into 9. In other words, the mentalities of Chokhmah bin Adat going into the keter, becoming mingled by being bounced, and becoming 9. So the 9 brothers correspond to the mentalities being mixed, and them joining Hashem in the cherem is the idea of the keter, and that it's an excommunication, a cherem, in order not to reveal that Yosef is around, is the idea of the pushback caused by the keter. All this was needed to prepare for the Jews to descend into Egypt in order to enter the exchange chambers, which is the representation of Egypt, and then eventually collect the sparks And when the Jews left with joy, thanks to Moshe Rabbeinu, on the night of Pesach, they brought with them all the holiness that was stuck in Egypt from the time of creation, bringing it back with them to Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So we have an idea, more or less, of the descent of Yosef, and that they sold him, okay? And the idea of Yaakov being punished because he wasn't around to feed and nourish the tzchok of Yitzchak, which was dependent on Yaakov's joy also. Because Yaakov represents complete joy. Yitzchak is extreme joy, but an extreme level. Because why is he called Yitzchak? Because of the tzchok, of the laughter that was when Yitzchak was born. Many barren women were conceived. Many sick people were healed. That type of joy is once in a blue moon. It's not every day. And everyday challenges, you need the joy of Yaakov. Sometimes it's Yaakov. Sometimes it's Israel. There's ups and downs. Knowing how to maneuver in those things. Okay? So now, Yaakov was punished in that he had mourning. Now that's a question. Yaakov, you represent joy. What's this mourning business? The mourning business is because Yaakov had to prepare for the future of Am Yisrael to be able to go into the exchange chambers of Egypt and to come out. So to prepare for that, he had to experience discomfort for 22 years. During those 22 years that Yaakov was in discomfort, who was happy? Yosef. The Torah says this week's Parshah, Yosef haya ish matzliach. He was successful. On those words, the Midrash says that Yosef was always happy and singing to himself, and he was so happy in serving Hashem. Even in exile, even in Egypt, he was very happy. So in other words, Yaakov not being happy, because he was being challenged to prepare for the experience of being in Egypt, which is the idea of the exchange chambers. But who, yes, was happy? Yosef. And eventually, when Yaakov came down to Egypt, he said those are the best days of his life. The best days of his life were the days when he was in Egypt. Okay? So we have a big picture of what's going on, why Yaakov is suffering. Yaakov represents Simcha. He's suffering 22 years because he's going through, on his personal level, he's going through the exchange chambers, which is the idea of Egypt. All that, so Yosef can be there, but happy, because Yosef was imprisoned, but like it says, the Psukim, that while he was in prison, he was always happy, and he's always singing to Hashem. Nothing could bring down Yosef, because he was an ish matzliach, a successful person, okay? So, the one thing we left that we have to open up is why the number 22. Okay, I understand 22 is the mathematical combination of the 7 times 2 that Yaakov worked for Rachel and Leah, and then the time that he worked for gaining pay, gaining the sheep, and then the traveling back and forth to come back to Eretz Yisrael. That up to 22. But what's so significant with the number 22? What does it signify? Especially that this is the Torah talking, and the Torah is giving us a presentation of what we are going through today. You know, Yaakov preparing the way, and Yosef, for us in our present exile, and then eventually coming out. It's the tag team energy of Yaakov with his suffering of 22 years, and Yosef becoming viceroy and building himself up in the 22 years. You know, what is the number 22 here? So this is something interesting. Take a look at the letter Kaf Bet. 22 in Hebrew is Kaf, the letter Kaf, and Bet. When you spell out the letter Kaf, that means you open up the letter Kaf. So now how you pronounce it is Kaf Pei. Okay? So what is that over there? Kaf is Kaf Pei. So that's 80, 90, 100. Okay? 20 plus 80, that's 100. And then Bet is, you can spell it Bet Tav without a Yud. So that's 400 plus the 100 there of the Kaf. So you have 400, 502. Bet. There's the Bet is 2. And Tav, 402 plus 100, 502. What is 502? 502 is 501 plus 1. What is 501? 501, believe it or not, is Nachman, Simcha, or Shimon, Yochai. The tag team of these two Tzaddikim, okay, which are really one. Nachman, the son of Simcha, Shimon, the son of Yochai. So they're 501 without Ben, because we take in consideration the father of these Tzaddikim, that they're also Tzaddikim. So Simcha, the father of Rebbe Nachman, and Yochai, the father of Shimon, with 1 for the tzaddik himself, so it's 502. 501 is Nachman Simcha. Simcha is Rebbe Nachman's father. Shimon Yochai, 501, plus 1 for the word. The kaf bet years that Yaakov suffered in preparation for our final exile, those 22 hints to the tzaddikim, the caliber of tzaddikim, who will be the shining lights to lead us out of exile. This is Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Nachman ben Simcha. Okay? Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, like he said himself, through my holy work, the Zohar, Yipekun min galuta, the Jews will come out of exile. And like Rabbi Nachman said himself, that when my book spreads in the world, my teachings, you can expect and anticipate Mashiach to come. So, again, it's a biased Breslov Chidush here, but it's coming to show something profound hidden here of why Yaakov was suffering. He wasn't suffering for emptiness. He was in pain. He wasn't consoled. Yosef is not dead, but he doesn't know for sure. So the bothering, the what's the word in English? The unsettledness that Yaakov had for 22 years was in order for him to go through a big term of betisha, bounce back from the keter. Proof being that Hashem agreed not to let Yaakov know, not letting them know about that Yosef is explicitly alive, and it's important to know explicitly. It's like Rabbi Nachman once said, when he foresaw, he knew beforehand that his daughter passed away, and his baby daughter passed away, Fega, and the family was trying to hide it up from him, and he knew already. But he said afterwards he can only sit down to mourn once he's told by a human being. Even a person knows something through HaKodesh, halacha is halacha. In order to sit down the mourning period, it has to be when a person actually hears from somebody, a human being, that this person passed away, that they have to mourn for, even if the other person knows. So Yaakov, as long as he wasn't told, that's the whole thing. He has to be told that Yosef is still alive. Even if he may feel it, he has some feeling of Ruach HaKodesh, it has to be kept, it has to be explicitly revealed. So Hashem was purposely not allowing Yaakov to know. Why? Why, Hashem, are you causing Yaakov to suffer? For the purpose of the Keter and the 9, the Betisha, in order to allow Yaakov to be the representation of the preparation for us in our exile, where we're going through non-stop setbacks and smashes and everything. But the forerunner was the Tzaddikim, the team of Yaakov and Yosef, that they managed to handle being strong. Yaakov fueling Yosef's Simcha in Egypt, this giving us the strength that we too, through the 2 Tzaddikim, who are Gematria Kafbet, Shimon Yochai, Nachman Simcha, we also can hold on B'ezrat Hashem. I hope that was clear. Shabbat Shalom and all the best.